The desert air was still when Lieutenant Maya Carter walked across the military airfield, her boots crunching softly against the gravel. In front of her stood one of the most powerful helicopters ever built, the legendary Boeing A-64 Apache. The Apache wasn't just a machine, it was a weapon of precision, a symbol of elite pilots. And today, Maya Carter was supposed to fly it. But the moment she reached the aircraft, the laughter began. Two male pilots leaned against a fuel truck watching her approach. One of them smirked. "You lost, Lieutenant?" he asked loudly. The other chuckled. "Pretty sure the tour group is on the other side of the base." Maya ignored them and continued walking. She had spent years preparing for this moment. Flight school, combat simulations, advanced helicopter certification, every test, every evaluation, every challenge, she passed them all. Yet here she was standing in front of the Apache and somehow still being treated like she didn't belong. One of the mechanics stepped in front of her. "Lieutenant, this bird isn't scheduled for training flights today." Maya calmly handed him the flight authorization. He looked at it, then looked at her, then shook his head. "Must be a mistake." Behind them, the pilots laughed again. "You really think she can handle an Apache?" Another voice joined in. "This isn't some civilian helicopter." Maya's jaw tightened, but she stayed calm. She had heard it before, at flight school, during training, even during her first combat simulation. People saw her uniform, but they didn't see a pilot. They saw a black woman. And they assumed she didn't belong. Still, Maya refused to react. Instead, she walked around the mechanic and approached the helicopter. The Apache towered above her, its rotors still and silent. She placed her hand on the cold metal. For a moment, everything else faded, because this was where she belonged, in the sky. But before she could climb into the cockpit, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Lieutenant Carter," she turned. Colonel Harris was walking toward her. His expression was not friendly. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" he asked. "Preparing for my scheduled flight, sir," Maya answered. He crossed his arms. "You're not flying that helicopter." Maya blinked. "Sir, I have clearance." Harris shook his head. "Clearance can be revoked." The pilots nearby smirked. Maya felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced it down. "May I ask why, sir?" The colonel stared at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Because that helicopter is too valuable to risk." The words hit harder than a slap. Too valuable, meaning she was. The pilots laughed again. Maya slowly lowered her hand from the aircraft. For a moment, it looked like she would walk away, but then something unexpected happened. The distant roar of engines echoed across the base. Everyone turned. A convoy of black military vehicles was approaching the airfield. The base suddenly became very quiet. Because everyone recognized those vehicles. They belonged to the visiting inspection team, and leading that team was an admiral. The convoy stopped. A tall, older officer stepped out. His uniform was decorated with rows of medals. The base commander rushed forward. "Admiral Thompson, welcome to..." But the admiral barely listened. His eyes were locked on the Apache helicopter. And the young lieutenant standing beside it. He walked straight toward her. The entire airfield watched in silence. When he reached Maya, something surprising happened. The admiral smiled. "Lieutenant Carter," Maya blinked in confusion. "Sir." Then the admiral turned to the colonel. His voice was calm but sharp enough to cut steel. "Why isn't she in the cockpit?" Colonel Harris hesitated. "Well, sir, we were just discussing," the admiral interrupted him. "No, you were." The entire base went silent because now everyone realized something. The admiral already knew who Maya Carter was. He looked back at her, then said something that made the entire airfield freeze. "This woman," the admiral said clearly, "is the best Apache pilot I have ever evaluated." The pilots who had been laughing moments earlier suddenly stopped breathing. Colonel Harris looked stunned. "Sir, with respect, I wasn't aware." "That's the problem, Colonel," the admiral replied. "You weren't aware." He turned back toward the helicopter, then looked at Maya. "Lieutenant Carter." "Yes, sir, show them." Maya nodded once. She climbed into the cockpit. Moments later, the Apache's rotors began spinning. Dust exploded across the airfield. The helicopter lifted into the sky. And what happened next, no one on that base would ever forget. Maya didn't just fly the Apache, she commanded it. The helicopter twisted through the air with impossible precision, sharp turns. Perfect altitude control. Combat maneuvers most pilots struggled to execute. Even the experienced pilots on the ground stared in disbelief. One of them whispered, "How is she doing that?" The admiral folded his arms proudly. "Because she knows that aircraft better than anyone here." The Apache dove low across the runway before climbing vertically into the sky. The maneuver was flawless. When Maya finally landed, the airfield was completely silent. No one laughed, no one smirked, no one questioned her. The rotors slowed, the cockpit opened. And Lieutenant Maya Carter stepped out. The Admiral walked toward her again. Then, in front of the entire base, he saluted her. The crowd gasped, because admirals don't usually salute lieutenants. But this time, respect had been earned. And for the first time that day, every single person on that airfield finally saw the truth. They had tried to stop the wrong pilot.